Ouch, Tammy called before she even hit the ground. Keep running, Jessica hollered. The panic showed on her face and in her voice. Jessica grabbed her friend's wrist and hauled her up off the ground. They staggered forward, trying to move as fast as their exhausted bodies would take them. Suddenly Tammy stopped. I can't go any further, and besides, we're lost. When you're lost you're supposed to stay where you're at until they find you. That's only when you're lost in the big woods, Jessica contradicted, her voice still edged with panic. We're not that far from the city. Besides, there's no way I'm waiting for that thing to catch up with us. Are you coming or should I leave you here? She kept walking forward, making it clear to Tammy that she meant what she said. Reluctantly, Tammy hurried after her. Under her breath Tammy muttered to herself. Why does she always have to be boss? It always has to be her way. Suddenly the woods opened up before them, and the kids found themselves in a clearing. Sitting in the middle of it, like a pupil in the middle of a naked eyeball, was a cabin. Both girls stopped suddenly and stared. The cabin looked lived in. Curtains fluttered at the windows, and the wildflowers that cluttered the front yard had a kept-up look about them. With a low moan, the door swung slowly open in front of them. The girls turned to run, but a soft breeze blowing from behind them reminded them of what they had run away from. When they turned back to the cabin, a grandmotherly woman had appeared on the doorstep. Are you children lost? She asked, or did you come all the way out here to pay a visit to Granny Betts? Granny Betts? Tammy thought. She remembered her parents talking about the old woman. She was kindly, even if she was considered a little off her rocker. Boldly Tammy stepped forward, ignoring the pull of Jessica grasping her arm. This was one time she wanted to be the boss. We were playing in a tree house in the woods, and we thought we heard a voice talking to us, Tammy explained, stepping further into the clearing. Then we heard dishes tinkling together, but there weren't any dishes there. Oh, Granny Betts exclaimed. Her hand flew to her mouth and fluttered there like a butterfly. Suddenly she seemed to gain control of herself. Please come in and talk to me, she pleaded. It's been so long since I've had visitors, and these old bones just don't get out as much as they used to anymore. Why do you live way out here by yourself? Tammy asked, as any remaining fear evaporated. The woman had looked frightened when the tree house was mentioned, and Tammy wanted to know why. There's a road, Jessica suddenly whispered harshly in her ear. Let's run, there's nothing to be afraid of, Jessica, the old woman said soothingly. How did you know my name? Jessica demanded shrilly. What are you, a witch? Goodness no, Granny Betts laughed. Tammy's mother pays me a visit once in a while. She's shown me pictures of Tammy, so I knew her right off. She's also told me about Tammy's best friend, and I figured that was you. Tammy smiled at her friend, happy to have the upper hand for once. My mom always says Granny Betts makes the best chocolate chunk cookies in the world. Jessica still didn't look too sure. But the road, she pleaded. It will lead us where we want to go. I want to go here, Tammy announced solidly. You can run away if you like, but I'm staying. Without waiting any longer she strode forward and into the cabin. Jessica stared longingly at the road for a moment, then followed hesitantly behind her friend. After the cookies were placed before them, along with a cool glass of milk, the conversation took a funny turn. Why do you live out here all alone? Tammy asked boldly. Granny Betts smiled at her. I guess you could say it's because of that tree house you visited this afternoon. Jessica immediately dropped her cookie back onto her plate and stared at their host. The haunted tree house? Yes, Granny Betts smiled. I guess way down deep in my heart I've never been able to leave the last place my little girl was seen. I'm sure you've heard the story, she said nodding to Tammy. Tammy's eyes grew as big as the last remaining cookie on her plate. Her mouth was full of cookie, so all she could do was shake her head excitedly. Oh, Granny Betts said, a little perturbed. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. Tammy swallowed several times to clear her mouth. Please tell us, she begged. Granny Betts took a deep breath. My husband died in a mining accident when my Julie was only 7 years old. Ike built this place and we didn't have anywhere else to go, so she and I just stayed on here. Her father had built her that tree house. After he died, she went there more and more. One day she and I got into a big fight about her helping with the chores around the house. She ran off to that tree house. When she didn't come back by nightfall, I went out in search of her. I could hear her up there as I was coming through the woods, but by the time I got there, everything had gone quiet. I guess she'd heard me calling her and hushed up. I knew she couldn't have gotten down, though, 'cause I kept my eyes on the trunk of that tree the whole time. She wouldn't come down when I stood there calling, so finally I climbed up that ladder after her. Granny Betts paused, as if the next part was hard to talk about. She wasn't there. I searched all through that little place, but she just wasn't there. And nobody ever saw her again. She dabbed the edge of her eye with the corner of her apron. Not ever? Jessica asked. Nope, Granny Betts answered. They had a big search party out that combed these woods, but nobody ever found a trace of her. For several nights, folks thought they heard her calling on the wind, but finally they decided it was just the wind whistling through the trees. My Julie was nowhere to be found. The two girls sat silent for a few minutes, thinking of the child lost so long ago. I'd like to ask a favor of you, Granny Betts said, turning to them earnestly. Would you play in that tree house for me? What? Jessica screamed. Tammy choked on her last cookie. Granny Betts reached out and laid a shaking hand on each of their arms. Please, she begged. They say that Julie's ghost still lives in the tree house. I don't want her to be lonely. And she was just your age. You want us to play with a ghost? Tammy said incredulously. Yes, Granny Betts begged. Then maybe she'll tell you what happened to her. Or more important, maybe you can tell her that I love her with all my heart, and that I'm sorry. The tears started to roll down the old woman's cheeks. Both girls felt sorry for her. Sorry enough to promise they would go there at least once more to try and deliver the message. Before going on, if you like these stories, do hit the like button, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell, so you will not miss new stories like this. It was 2 weeks later when they finally got up the courage to keep their promise. They were edging through the woods, keeping their eyes moving all around them. As soon as they stepped deeper into the woods, the sun disappeared behind a cloud that hadn't been there a moment before. The wind grew suddenly chilly, and playfully covered their eyes with their hair, almost as if it didn't want them to see what was coming. Both girls shivered nervously and paused. Let's not do this, Jessica said, her voice pleading. But we promised Granny Betts, Tammy said. She's not my granny, Jessica retorted. Nor yours. No, but she's my friend, Tammy challenged. And if you're my friend, you'll come. Jessica stood her ground, her hands on her hips. It was clear that she didn't like being the one who was told what to do. Please, Tammy begged. Besides, if word gets around school how brave you are, that creepy Timmy Parsons is sure to leave you alone. How will word get around school? Jessica asked, turning the idea over in her mind. I'll tell Anna Summers, Tammy volunteered. Then everyone will know. And I'll make you sound real good. That did it. Jessica strode forward like she was leading an expedition and Tammy followed. As they neared the treehouse everything was silent. Everything. There was no chatter of small birds or other animals. Their footsteps sounded as if they were giant dinosaurs stomping through the woods. The wind kept up its chilly warning, and by the time they reached the treehouse they were shivering. There it stood, silent and imposing in one of the largest trees in the forest. 20 feet off the ground, nestled in the crook of two large arms of the tree, it looked like a child's dream toy. The ladder hung down invitingly, just like it had the day they had come here before. But somehow the treehouse didn't feel the same as it had. You go first, Jessica ordered as she held the swaying rope ladder. Tammy didn't dare contradict her for fear of losing her only ally. Slowly she grabbed a rung and began climbing. It wasn't until she neared the base of the tree house that she felt Jessica's weight on the ladder below her. When Jessica neared her position, Tammy returned her attention upward. "Julie," she whispered cautiously. "Are you there?" Above their heads a footstep sounded softly and the board creaked beneath it. Both girls shuddered in fear, but nothing else happened. "Julie," Tammy whispered again. This time there was no sound at all. The silence seemed to press in around them. Cautiously Tammy slipped her head above the edge of the tree house and peered in. There was nothing there. Suddenly a group of leaves raced across the floor playing tag with the wind. "Is she there?" Jessica asked below her. "I don't see her," Tammy answered. "Then let's go home. My arms are getting tired." "But we promised we'd try to play with her," Tammy responded. Without further hesitation, she hoisted herself above the edge, and climbed into the tree house. The leaves skittered back across the floor as if they were excited about having a new playmate. A moment later Jessica joined them. The two girls stood near the ladder, taking no more than 2 steps into the room. Finally Tammy wound up her courage enough to speak again. "Julie," she began in a mechanical voice. Nothing stirred. Even the wind waited. "Julie," Tammy tried again. "Your mom sent us. She wanted us to tell you that she was sorry about the fight you had and that she loves you, and misses you very much." A heart-wrenching sob exploded through the silence. Both girls turned and jumped toward the ladder. Suddenly a piercingly cold rush of wind raced past them. It caught the ladder and tossed it high into one of the branches. Both girls tugged at it frantically, trying to pull it loose, but it refused to come. It was wrapped around a limb and held tight. Jessica spun on her heel and Tammy followed the motion, but neither knew exactly where to look. "What do you want from us?" Jessica screamed at the air. For a moment there was silence. Then a whispered plea came from all around them. "I want to show you something." Both girls stared around, trying to find a source for the voice. There was none. "Please don't be afraid," came the voice. "What do you want to show us?" demanded Jessica, some of her old spark returning. "Follow me and you'll see," sang the voice from the branches above their head. It actually sounded happy. Tammy looked at her friend questioningly. Then they glanced back at the ladder, still tangled on the tree limb. There seemed to be no choice. "You first," Jessica insisted. Tammy hesitated. Something in the voice sounded sad and longing. Granny Betts had said that Julie had been a kind child, but was she still? "Come on," the voice urged from even higher up. "I want to show you a secret." Tammy spit on her hands and rubbed them together. Then she reached for the branches. Slowly she pulled herself up and began to climb. Several moments later Jessica followed, holding tightly to each branch, and making sure her footing was secure before moving onward. She watched as Tammy climbed above her. Tammy was being cautious, but she was still leaving her friend behind. It seemed that all her attention was focused on the voice. Tammy reached a position 20 feet above the treehouse and 40 feet above the ground. She paused a moment and looked down. Jessica had barely made any progress in her climb. She was far below, and the ground was even farther. "Isn't this high enough?" asked Tammy, looking into the branches above her. "Can't we see it from here?" "No," Julie urged. "Climb higher. Climb higher." Slowly Tammy followed the order and began climbing again. As she got higher and higher in the old tree, she could feel the ancient branches creaking and sagging with her weight. They began getting thinner and thinner, though the trunk was still huge. Tammy kept herself next to the mighty base of the tree. At least it was still large and felt solid. "Just a little more," the voice urged. Tammy didn't dare look down, not even to check on the progress of her friend. Her eyes glanced outward and suddenly she realized how high she was. She could see the entire town laid out before her like a miniature Christmas village. Only the snow was missing. Jessica, Her voice cried out pleadingly. From below her there was no sound. Tammy couldn't bring herself to look down. Climb higher, the voice urged once again. Climb up to my voice and you'll be there. I want to show you something. Tammy wanted to protest, but she knew if she opened her mouth she would be sick. She swallowed quickly and concentrated on the branch directly above her. Slowly she pulled herself higher. Moments later Tammy had reached the spot where the voice had last come from. She stared at the branch in front of her, clutching it tightly with both arms. I used to climb this tree all the time, the voice explained gently. One day I found a secret spot where it had been hit by lightning. Animals had hollowed it out and I used to hide things in there. One day Mama and I got in a fight. I ran to the tree house, but she came looking for me. That's when I hid in there, but I got stuck and I couldn't get out. From way up here no one heard me call for help. Please tell Mama I'm sorry. Please tell her I love her too. The voice broke off in a sob that died away on the wind. It was almost as if the ghost had ridden the wind out of the tree. Slowly, carefully, Tammy pried her eyes from the branch and turned toward the trunk. There was a slight indentation, made by 50 years of leaves falling into the hollow. Tammy reached forward and touched it lightly. As if it was a curtain, the leaves fell away, and from inside stared the empty eyes of a child's skeleton. Hope you like this true scary haunted ghost stories. Please leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.